Hi, this is Pastor Tim. I welcome you to day 3 of this 5-day devotional called Do Not Lose Heart. There is someone who wants you to lose heart. He wants to rob you of your joy and convince you to lose your trust in God. He looks for opportunities to discourage you and defeat you, especially when you're hurting or having problems. 1 Peter 5:8 tells us, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." The Apostle Paul faced multiple situations that could have caused him to lose heart and to give up. In Acts 16, it says the crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten. And after they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. Upon receiving such orders, he put them in the inner cell, that's the darkest place, and he fastened their feet in the stocks. What a horrible situation. It's hard to imagine worse situations, but about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. They weren't crying and complaining and depressed. They were singing and praying and having a great testimony to those around them. And because of this, the passage goes on to talk about the Philippian jailer and his family accepting Jesus. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul writes, "We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God, who raises the dead. And He did rescue us from mortal danger, and He will rescue us again. We have placed our confidence in Him, and He will continue to rescue us." Paul had amazing faith in the midst of persecution. And it's very probable that the persecution of Christians and opposition to the teaching of the Bible in America will most likely increase in the coming days. We need to be prepared. In 2 Corinthians 4:1 says, "Therefore, since through God's mercy we have this ministry, we do not lose heart." Our enemy wants us to lose heart and to quit talking to people about Jesus. But someday we'll be able to look back and say with the same confidence Joseph had when he spoke to his brothers in the Old Testament. You may be familiar with his story. He was almost killed by his own brothers out of jealousy, but instead they sold him into slavery. And he spent many years as a slave and a number of years in prison for something he didn't do. And then finally, God raised him to leadership in Egypt, where he was used to save the nation of Israel through his wisdom. When his brothers finally realized who Joseph had become, they were afraid. They were afraid he might take revenge for what they had done to him. But Joseph now knew that it was all part of God's plan. So he told them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Well, maybe you don't have that same confidence right now. That's okay. Joseph didn't always have it either. when his brothers had thrown him into the pit and were intending to kill him, listened to what they saw. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. Joseph didn't sit calmly in the pit and say, "You are intending to harm me, but God intends this for good." No, Joseph was distressed. He was desperate. Joseph may not have developed his confidence until after God's plan was revealed. He did demonstrate his faith in God and remained obedient. We must do the same. Even if we're distressed with how things are turning out, we must hold on to our faith and remain obedient until God's plan is finished. When our daughter Sarah was really young, we had to take her into the doctor to get an immunization shot. And the first time, she's not really sure what's happening, so the nurse can kind of sneak up on her and give her a shot. But the second time we took her in for one, she knew it was going to happen, and she looks at us like, "Why are you taking me to this evil person who's going to poke me?" And you really can't explain the importance of immunizations to a 2-year-old. She has to just trust you, but just breaks your heart to see her look at you like, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?" Children have to learn to trust their parents even though they don't understand a lot of what we do. And Christians, we have to learn to trust our Heavenly Father even though we cannot fully understand Him or His ways. If you choose to not believe in God because of evil and suffering in the world, where does that leave you? There is no other God or religion or philosophy that solves the problem. It just leaves you without the resources, strength, and comfort that God can give. It leaves you without hope. It leaves you without the hope of the promises of God to solve these things when Jesus returns. We will readily admit that there is a knowledge gap between a child and an adult. But there's a much bigger gap in the knowledge between a finite human being and the eternal Lord. When Sarah was only 6 months old, a doctor had discovered that she had a problem with one of her hip sockets being underdeveloped. So she had to wear a brace for 3 months that pulled her legs up in a certain way which would stimulate the growth. Now, this brace kept her from being able to stretch her legs out. The only time she was allowed to have it off was during bath time. Bath times became the happiest part of our days. As soon as her legs got free of that brace, she would start joyously kicking her legs around for all she was worth. She was full of energy and laughter. It was so great to see her happy. The worst part of our days was putting the brace back on after the bath. Her smile disappeared and she looked so sad, like we had just drained the life out of her. She had no idea why we were putting this brace on, and there was no way to explain it to her. We were so glad when her 3-month checkup showed that her hip had healed and she was free of the brace forever. We may read the verse in Isaiah where God says this: "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." While we will acknowledge that, at the same time we expect God to always give us understanding of what He's doing. I don't think God purposely hides His thoughts or His reasoning from us. There are times that our finite minds just cannot understand, even if He explained it to us. We understand intellectually that God is beyond our understanding, but we're not consistent in living according to that knowledge. We get angry with God because we don't understand what He's doing or agree with what He's doing. Anytime we get angry with God or complain to Him, saying things like, "Why did you let this happen?" or "Why aren't you taking care of this problem?" we are assuming that we are capable of understanding God. Let's not let circumstances cause us to lose heart. Let's continue to trust our good and wise God. Thank you for joining me for this devotional, and I pray and hope again that this has been helpful for you. And I encourage you to think about one thing you've learned and put it in the comment section below. Thank you and God bless you.